Hey VC members, it's me again. I thought I'd make a second video today with the Beatle albums and just carry on where I left off. Just did the first album, Please Please Me. Real quick, unrelated, but here's a couple of books that I picked up recently and have read. I read the Brian Wilson book already. I'm in just started this one. This is by David Marks. He's this guy right here. So he was kind of called the Lost Beach Boys, sort of the forgotten Beach Boy, maybe like a little bit of a Pete Best situation, even though he was actually in the band up through the first four albums and added quite a bit to the band, but then was no longer there, kind of forgotten. Still going. He just made a new CD recently, and anyway, so I might do a review of those when I finish this one. Said I already finished that one, but we're here to talk about the Beatles today, and I'm doing the idea that I cribbed from Joe and Larry Graves, where I'm taking Beatles albums and ranking them not least to best, but in preference of my order of how I like them, because like I said, there's with Beatle albums there's really not very many least songs, at least in my opinion. And so we go with the Beatles, and this, even though we've had the British versions of the albums in America since '87 or so, really, with the CDs, when those finally came out with CD back then, I still can't get over. I'm still used to the American albums, which were different covers and different song orders and stuff, up and through Sgt. Pepper. And so it's kind of weird for me. This is the same, of course, Meet the Beatles is what I'm used to, which has this same cover with the title Meet the Beatles and sort of a blue tint to it instead of the black and white photo. But it's just weird to have this album and not have I Want to Hold Your Hand on it. Over in England, they didn't. They did on Please Please Me. It had Love Me Do and Please Please Me on it, but they didn't put the hit singles on the albums very often in England because English kids apparently didn't have the post-war kids in England didn't have as much disposable income as did American kids. So American kids, I guess, didn't mind buying the album that already had the hit 45 on it that they just bought a month or so earlier. But the British kids, I guess a lot of them didn't have as much money to do that with, and so they preferred, if they were going to spend the money on an album, to get stuff they didn't already have if they'd already bought the 45. It's what I've read in the history books anyway. I wasn't there, so I don't know. But this was a bear to rank because, like I said, there's no bad track on here, and this album, it's 10 out of 10 in my opinion. Pretty much every song on here is a 10 out of 10. There might be one there'd be one that'd be less than a 10, and another I'd give a 9 to, but everything else I'd give a 10. And this is one, like Joe had mentioned this, I think maybe Larry mentioned this when he did his ranking on this, that this is an album that a lot of Beatles, when they're ranking the Beatles albums, this sort of falls towards the bottom for some people. I don't really get that. This is one of my favorites of theirs, and as much as I love the first album, and I do, this is like a sonic leap from that first album to this one. The Beatles here are fully, the Beatles sound is here in full blossom, and they just don't sound like anything. They're fresh and new, and where the first album they were all of that, but they still sounded kind of like a 50-ish, early 60-ish sound in some respects. Here they're fully the Beatles, and it's just a quantum leap from their first album to this one, even though I ranked the first album a 10 too, a 10 as well. And this was recorded, this went to #1 for 21 weeks. It knocked their first album down to #2, which had been #1 for like 6 months. It came out like 3 months after their first album. I mean, who does that nowadays? Puts out 2 albums 3 months apart of this quality? It's a rhetorical question. The answer is no one, of course. Came out on November 22nd, 1963 in England. They were not really known in America at this point. Of course, November 22nd is a famous date for all of us of a certain age. Robert Freeman took the photograph for the cover here. Very artsy, very well done. They talk about the Beatles revolutionizing album cover artwork with things like Sgt. Pepper and Revolver and White Album and stuff, but they were really doing it from the get-go. I mean, their first album cover is a good one, but this one is really hits it out of the ballpark, I think. Uh, Back cover maybe not so exciting, but great picture there for the front cover, and just a great album cover. So yeah, that covers all that. And you've seen this album. I don't really even have to be holding it up. And the story of the Beatles. So let's get to the songs. There are 14 songs on here, 6 of which are covers, the rest which are written by either Lennon, McCartney, or Harrison. So we'll go with number 14, which is a cover, which is sung by George Harrison. Number 14, I picked Roll Over Beethoven, the old Chuck Berry song. In the video for Please Please Me, where I was ranking that, I said how not a huge fan of covers, but the Beatles are the exception, as they are in so many aspects. They really took covers and made them their own. And one of the things that played into that, I think, is that they tended to take covers. Some of the songs that they covered were hits, but some of them were pretty obscure and not hits. Great songs that just didn't get a chance, and the Beatles covered them and did a fine job of them. This original's still great, but the Beatles put their own spin on it, their own stamp on it. They didn't just do a carbon copy cover, and they made it great. And they sort of, for the most part, with a few exceptions, they sort of stayed away from covering the big, huge, well-known hits. They didn't cover Hound Dog and Heartbreak Hotel or, that sort of thing, mainly. Here, Roll Over Beethoven and Chuck Berry song, which I think was a pretty big hit and pretty well known. And not that there's anything wrong with doing a well-known cover if you do it well. And they do a good job on it, but it's a little bit pedestrian. And it just, it's one of those Beatles songs that just was sort of there for me. Can't say anything bad about it so much as that it just never, it's okay. From there on out, it gets really tough because on any given day, if I come back tomorrow or next week, this might all be in a different order because, like I said, there's not a song on here I don't love, but I had to rank them somehow, and I struggled over it. Number 13, Little Child, which is a great song. It's original there, but again, it's one of the, I don't want to say it's a generic Beatles song, but it's one of those that sort of, when I'm listening to the album, it just sort of, okay, it's on, and then once it's over, sort of flies by me. Good song, though. Number 12, All My Loving. Great song. I love the guitar part in that. And again, I mean, it's at number 12, which might be surprising to some people. And if I did this ranking next week, it might be in a different spot. Probably would be. All these songs, it's almost like picking out what's your favorite kid or something here. I mean, it's just, these are so good. But you don't put your kids in order. That's not a good thing to do, but you got to put these songs in order. So it comes in at number 12 today. Number 11, Till There Was You, a song that was in the play The Music Man, which is one a lot of people kind of blow a raspberry at. It's one of Paul's granny music type songs. I don't know how kids in 1963 saw this. One of those things that comes up when people bring up the not really valid argument that the Rolling Stones were rougher, more raw than the Beatles. They'll throw out something like this. I always liked it. It's got a great little guitar bit in the middle of it from George. And basically, I like the song. I mean, yeah, it's more like the stuff that our parents would listen to, but than it is rock and roll. But it's a good song. Number 10, I Want to Be Your Man, Ringo. Of course, it's the song they wrote and gave to the Rolling Stones too. Rolling Stones do a great version of it. I like the Beatles a little bit better, and might well be my favorite Ringo song with the Beatles. It's just so much energy, just as much as he did with Boys. This is a better song than Boys, I think, though. Just a raw pounding rock and roll song. Good stuff. All I've Got to Do comes in at number 9, and It's another song that a lot of people don't like. It's kind of a sounds like it wasn't. They didn't take much time with it, but I always loved it. Um, Not a Second Time is another one like that that comes in at number 8. Uh, but I think the fact that they maybe realized, or maybe it's just a mistake and they didn't realize with Not a Second Time, is that sounds like if they spent more time on it and polished it a little more. But I think if they would have done that, it would have been taking something away from it and been kind of just a random generic song, and leaving it where it's kind of a rough demo, almost, I don't want to say punk rock maybe, but maybe punk rock years before the fact type song, just a sort of a thrown together, and there it is, let's move on. I think that works in its favor. I think it's a great song. Number 7, Don't Bother Me. George Harrison's first song that he wrote, or first recorded song that he wrote. I don't know if he wrote anything before this. He's on record as saying that this was, he never liked it much. I never got this. I think it's a great song. I love it. He grew and as a songwriter, of course, but for a first effort, this is great. And it's really, to me, it's one of my favorite of his Beatles songs. I think it holds up with, or even better than some of his later songs. I like it. I think it's cool. Cool guitar, cool vocals, good song. And I don't know if the fact that he said that probably back in the mid 60s or something, I don't know if his opinion of the song ever changed later in life, or if he ever just might have forgotten he wrote it, and I don't know. Would have been interesting if someone would have thought to ask him later in life that, you said you didn't like this song, but 30 years after the fact, what do you think of it now? Number 6, Hold Me Tight. And that's, it's just a great, perfect, wonderful song. Number 5 is Devil in Her Heart. George sings that, and that's a cover. And that is, what's the band that did that? The Dantes, I believe. And that's my point kind of with Roll Over Beethoven, where they did one of the rare occasions where they did a really well-known, famous cover of a well-known, famous song. Again, not that there's anything wrong with that, but it's just sort of done. They sort of run through it. Devil in Her Heart, George just sings the devil out of it. Pounding song, a great song. And the odd thing about this is sort of, where they heard Roll Over Beethoven, because that stuff's on the radio and all. That was a hit song. But Devil in Her Heart came out on a 45 that just sold nothing, didn't chart in America, certainly didn't chart in England. And the band that was put together to record that song, I don't think they ever did an album. I think they only did like 2 or 3 45s and disappeared and broke up or whatever. And just very obscure song. And I think it came out, I want to say 1960, 1961 or something. And you just wonder, where in the world did George, or usually the one that sings it is the one that found it, where did they run across this song? Because it wasn't, from what I've read, was not a hit, didn't make the Billboard top 200 or anything. So it's just weird that they would run across this little obscure song, but it's a good thing they did, because they do a great version of it. Now we get down to the top 4, and this is impossible, because I could switch these around all day long, and they're all really almost all number 1 in my heart for this album. But we'll go with number 4, Money. John Lennon, the Barrett Strong song, which is great. His version, the original version's great. John's is even better. He just sings the dog out of it. It's just, what can you say? That's why it's hard to. That's why I didn't really want to review Beatles albums, and I thought this would be better just to rank the songs, because it's just, what can I add? What can I say? It's Money. It's one of the great songs. Then we go to Please Mr. Postman for number 3, which could easily be number 1. Who wrote that damn thing? But I don't remember who did that. That's a Motown song. Great original. Another great John vocal. Just, again, what can you say? It's a perfect song. It's a 10. It's I love that part where he goes, deliver, de letter, de sooner, de better, and just when I did that snippet contest a few years ago, name your favorite little like 2-3 second parts of songs, that line would definitely be one for me. Great vocal, great song. Just you know, this isn't a very good video because I don't really know what to say about these songs other than they're great, they're great, they're great, and I just keep saying that. So number two, I've got "You Really Got a Hold on Me," a Smokey Robinson song. Smokey Robinson's great version. I think John does it better. The Beatles do it better. Just incredible, urgent, aching, perfect vocals. I mean, that "Please, Mr. Postman, You Really Got to Hold on Me" might be, if not my two favorite John Lennon vocals, they're got to be in the top 4 or 5. So "You Really Got to Hold on Me." That leaves the number one spot, which right now, like I said, if I was to do this tomorrow, it might change the order on this some, but I think this would still be number one. It just explodes out of the album. It's the opening track. It won't be long. It just blows the album wide open. It's a great opening track, great song. Is just, again, just urgent, just pounding rock and roll. Just, I don't know, could have been a 45, could have been a hit, I think. And I love that song. And that's the one that the London Times music critic was talking about, Aeolian cadences and all these, all these scholastic musical terms, and John Lennon was kind of laughing when he's reading that because he's like, I don't know what the hell those things are, but I guess that's nice to say. But it's just an incredible album. So yeah, I mean, it's just almost impossible to rank the songs on this for me because there's, you just got 14 songs and you got what, 12 of them are 10, and I guess Roll Over Beethoven I'd give like a 7 or an 8, and Little Child maybe I'd give a like an 8 or a 9. But so you're just ranking tens, and it's like someone gives you 14 $5 bills and asks you which one you like best. I don't know. But that's my thoughts on that album, and we'll return with the next Beatles album when I feel like doing another video.